we want to join Karin Boomsma, the Director of Sustainable Inclusive Business, to just give us her take on ensuring that businesses are sustainable at this time of the COVID-19 pandemic. Karin, welcome. No, just 1 second.
Thank you very much.
Can you hear me, Karin?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You were telling us about what a sustainable and inclusive economy means. Could you just go on with that?
Yes, a sustainable and inclusive economy means actually that you as a business have a positive impact on people and planet, and that you are responsible throughout the value chain. So what we see currently is that there's a lot of disconnect between elements in a value chain, between people and nature and the environment, while it's actually all interlinked. So what we need to restore is really that connection, and that we are a business within an ecosystem. You don't operate on your own. And I think what you see now is that people are making an effort to be responsible, to try and share. Maybe they have come to a standstill, but they share their distribution channels to distribute sanitizers. You see that all those kind of things happen. And what we believe in is that that should be part of your business and your core business always, not only during a crisis. So we don't only depend on money on the end of the bottom line, but we actually depend on people and planet and profit, and that should be all interlinked.
All right. And Karin, do you think that businesses are aware of the fact that it's not just about making the profit, it's even about looking at the impact it has on the environment, on the community, the people around them? Do you think they're alive to that fact?
Yeah, I think there's a lot more awareness than there used to be. And we are facing so many challenges that we have to admit that we need to operate in a different way. Mm-hmm. The linear economy, as we currently have it, is taking resources, we make something out of it, and we only look at the production efficiency, cheap labor, cheap energy, and cheap production. And then after having pushed products into the society, we dispose them if we don't use them anymore. And that's far from sustainable, not only for us, not only for the environment, but also for businesses. So we need to look at a thriving economic model. And we see that a circular economy could be a very good model to apply, because there we phase out waste, we take care of our resources. Once you take a resource, becomes input, that output becomes an input again. That's ultimately what we're looking at. So the things can go round and round. Mm-hmm. In the process, you can start reusing materials. You design it in a different way, so they're much longer lasting. And in the reuse, also a part would be recycling. And that all offers jobs opportunities as well. At the same time, when we're not depending on importing resources, and we are much more careful about our resource management, we will boost our local economies tremendously. And that's what we see is now failing. And we see how dependent we are on different parts all over the world, but we're not responsible. So what you see now is big fashion shops closing down shops, but online deliveries, they can hardly keep up because they're not in charge of the people in the factory. They just place an order. So we need to bring back and restore connection between people, planet, and the profits.
Right. And what does the manufacturing sector have to do to ensure that they play their role in this circular economy, to ensure that the economy is circular, the manufacturing sector specifically?
Yeah, you see that the circular economy will be approached in different countries on different levels and different entry points. Mm-hmm. In Kenya, we're trying to look at the responsibility, what happens with waste, so to avoid massive amounts of waste in landfills. So we see that we are now currently setting up extended producer responsibility schemes for the manufacturing sector. But if you choose a specific packaging, it should not end up in the environment, neither on a landfill. And you can prevent that and pick up your responsibility and set up a system where you can collect those materials, recover the materials back, and make sure you can recycle them. Ultimately, you would like manufacturers to make a different choice for material use. So really redesign. Do we need to dispose? Is it really necessary to have so much single-use plastics around it? And also because the quality of recycled materials will become lower and less during the process. So ultimately, we need to redesign the choice for materials and the material use itself.
Right. You spoke about the issue of recollection of these waste materials. There are very many people who have these materials maybe in their houses, empty bottles, plastic bottles, but they can't reuse them or they don't know where to get them. What is the role of the government in ensuring that these systems are present even as they support the private sector?
Yeah. We need to raise awareness around it, and you need to set up an infrastructure that is also defined by law. Currently, the Waste Management Bill does contain lots of circular economy elements, and also, for instance, sorting at site. So sorting at source and sorting at site. Once that bill has been accepted by Parliament, we can really implement and start implementing that. And obviously, the private sector and collectors and recyclers and manufacturers need to implement that system together. But one thing is also raising awareness and also labeling. At the moment, we do not have a system that provides for sorting as much as we actually would like to see it. But there's being work done around it, and we will expect the minute the bill becomes law, that it would be easier to shape a new waste management system around it.
And it's not just about waste management. There is, of course, the responsible use of even fertilizer when you're planting food. So it is quite an ecosystem that needs, it's every sector that needs to change the way it looks at things, right?
Yes, it's completely true, because again, that boils down to the disconnect. We can feel as a business we are not responsible, or it's very expensive to invest, for instance, in wastewater management and treatment. But ultimately, we are eating the vegetables that grow down that stream. So we really need to realize that on all levels, we are all human beings. We're all part of society, and we're all citizens and consumers also in the end of the day. So yes, we have to look at how we treat our soil in order for us to also be able to provide everyone with healthy and nutritious food. And it's all linked together. So yes, we have a collective responsibility, and it's on all sectors.
Right, and as you talk about providing everyone with healthy and nutritious food, there's also the flip side of it, of ensuring that we use the land in a better way to ensure that we protect the climate that we have. Climate change has been quite a big problem. Could you speak to that?
Sorry, I didn't get the last bit, but I understand you're saying that the way we produce more food for everyone also implicates sometimes a downside on what kind of fertilizers we're using, etc. Is that correct?
No, I'm talking about the issue of the land management and land use in reference to climate change, the way it impacts the climate.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. At the moment, so that's also why we would look at a new way of agriculture, and we will call it regenerative agriculture. Again, it simply means that you basically have a positive impact on the soil and on the land you are using. What we also need to look at is a diet in itself. We need to move way more towards a plant-based diet. And obviously in Kenya and other parts of Africa, we're not so heavily impacting the environment with animal agri. But we have to realize that 70% of all the agri-land we're using is actually used to grow animals and to have dairy or meat production. And that's actually not necessary, and it produces lots of carbon emission, and it's a lot of pressure on land use as it is. The other thing is that if you do agriculture in a way that is really good for the soil, it requires cross-cropping. and it requires other technologies which we're fully capable of, and it will actually make your soil much better and your produce much more nutritious. But we need to also inform people and train people on how to do that and why that's so important.
Mm-hmm. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, since it started, there have been quite a number of lockdowns, less movement, less number of vehicles on the roads. And it has been evident that the earth seems to be healing. Some rivers are getting clearer, the air is getting better. What does this say about now, beyond the COVID-19 pandemic, what needs to change?
What needs to really change to beat these kind of crises is that we need to restore the harmony we have with nature. We need to realize it's actually about eco. And we have elevated ourselves from the ecosystem, where we're part of the animal world, and we have created an ecosystem where we put ourselves on top of it. And this applies to everything and anything. We are actually special animals, or not so special, but we have the capability of imagination. With our imagination, we've created systems. And we have to understand that if systems don't work and they do not make us resilient to face those crises, we need to choose to create new systems. And we're completely capable of doing it, but we need to be willing to do it. And we need to let go of the ultimate idolatry of only financial means.
Mm-hmm. And this of course goes into the business values that businesses have. What goes into changing business values to now have a look at the impact instead of just the profit?
Yeah, you would assume that if, like, let's face it, if you look at your financial report by the end of the year and you've made a profit, that doesn't guarantee you make the same profits next year. That's depending on so many more elements. So what we really like to promote is the integrated capital system, that if you do make a financial report, it's not only on the capital of finance, but it's also natural capital, intellectual capital, human capital, and your social and relation capital you have. So then you have all the components in place to build a system that you can rely on altogether, and you can respond much quicker, and you boost the local economies at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And there has never been a time more like now that there is need for businesses to just come and give to their communities, the communities that they are in. In what ways can they do that at this moment?
Yeah, it's true. It's great to see actually the solidarity, and there are businesses suffering big time. Let's face it, for instance, tourism is completely on a standstill, and people are having troubles to keep their employees going. And yet we see that especially those businesses that are suffering so badly, they are now using their transport to distribute soap, to make soap of the waste and leftover oils. We see farms that say, I can't get rid of my produce outside my county, but let's now buy those crops and feed the people in need. And we see lots of great business efforts where they share their talents, their skills, and any source and asset they can share now. And also we see that needs are being fulfilled. So what we've created is on sustainableinclusivebusiness.org. You can find a matchmaking platform specifically around this COVID challenge we are having at the moment, this crisis, where businesses can share what they have to share and need what they need to actually keep others going, to keep the society going. So please, everyone can join. Any business that can share is welcome to find their match on the platform. It's called sustainableinclusivebusiness.org, and you will find a link to register and to upload your need or your share.
Thank you, Karin. That is quite an interesting initiative there. And is there, can a business say that they have too little to give?
Sorry, say again.
I'm asking if there is a place for a business to say that they have too little to give.
Yeah, there's definitely a space for it, and this platform would be great to do the matchmaking, but also to grow it to a bigger initiative. We would like to also share all the impacts that are being generated now, and also convert it actually into future-proof values that we can take along, hopefully also once this crisis is over.
And once this crisis is over, of course, business will come back, possibly not to normal. Things will have changed by that time. Could you just talk to maybe the younger generation who are now taking up these businesses, being trained to get into the leadership positions? What do they need to have, the values they need to have to ensure that they are looking at a holistic perspective?
Yes, they need to, exactly that. They need to look at a holistic perspective. They're not a standalone. They're not just an entity on itself, what you are from 9 to 5. You're really part of a system, and there you need to add value. And the value is not only in terms of financial numbers. So you really have to look at the responsibility you have as a business. Do you contribute to issues? Are we solving problems together? Are we building something that can go on and on and on forever? So sustainability is really truly about being and sustaining yourself, and to not get extinct as a business or as a human species. So we are quite hopeful, actually, because it's also an eye-opener. Bill Gates mentioned it as a corrector of the current system. And I really hope and believe it will boost and make the shift towards a circular economy much faster.
Right, so this is about harnessing the power of the people power, yeah?
It definitely is, and everyone should be included. And exactly that will be allowed by new systems. It's not, again, what you see, there's a factory and there's all these different kind of links, but the client itself doesn't even know how those people are being treated, what kind of living wages are in place. But it's really to restore the responsibility and to create systems that we all can rely on through good and bad times.
And let's talk about matters energy and the responsibility that the governments have. Of course, many governments like Kenya has been trying to move to renewable energy and to ensure that they are just responsible in the way that they give energy to the people so that their businesses can thrive. What is the role of governments here?
The role of government is really to motivate everyone to use renewable energies, and that comes with incentives. I am not completely aware of the final numbers, but there used to be an exemption on solar energy products, but not on all of it. I think some of the rules have changed during this current crisis, but yes, incentive programs around the sustain of solar energy, wind, any renewable resources should be promoted. But we should also have a system in place at the same time, because solar energy is great and the sun is free. But we need to, again, take care of the systems we put in place, because we have currently a lot of unmanageable solar product waste. So we have to look into that. But the government role is really to facilitate people to transition to renewable energy, to make it more cost efficient for people to do that. We are also much more resilient, because if we face power cuts, but we have a solar system, we still have power, even if we have to stay at home during a lockdown. So they really need to stimulate people to do that.
Right, and at a personal level, we've talked about the governments and the businesses. At a personal level, does an individual have a role to play in this?
On a personal level, we all have a responsibility as well, because we are consumers and we make choices every day on what we buy and what we don't buy. So the consumer's voice is always very strong, and sometimes it requires really a push. So I think as a citizen, we are responsible to feel responsible any time and any moment of the day in any entity we have. So it should not change from being at home and being a parent, then going to the office and you apply completely different responsibility principles. You should be a responsible citizen at all times.
And where do you get the information on what is right or what you should buy, what you should not buy, how to use all these other things? Where do you get that information?
Yeah, there's still a lack of those kind of awareness campaigns. And also, if you do raise awareness around the fact that plastic has not been recycled yet, or that you can better buy another product, there should be an infrastructure in place to also implement it. Otherwise, people lose a bit of hope and they don't want to make an effort. For instance, we have a really nice app, but we would try to convert into a more relevant African model, is go on a plastic diet. And this app, which is called My Little Plastic Footprint, is actually showing you what you can do, whether you can better buy this shampoo bottle or you can replace it with something else, and to really cut down on the use of materials that you use once and that you then throw away. It should also be more visible on the product itself, so by labeling the products, and that's something the government can put in place. That is actually by law that you label the product as being, is it made out of recycled material? Can we recycle it? Is it being reusable? Or is it biodegradable? So we need to also look at that. And more comes into place and will show people how to best go about it.
Yeah, you've said there is quite a lack of awareness in terms of this information, and who needs to take up their role in ensuring that people are educated?
Yeah, it's a collective effort. And once you enter new stages in development, entering a new economy, you will have innovations where there's no law yet in place. So you have to shape the law after an innovation. Some other issues will be tackled by pressure of the consumer, others by just a ban. I mean, the plastic bag ban was very successful. It's just a ban and everyone does it. It's a bit like the curfew. It's a law and everyone is doing it. So it needs a sort of sandwich approach, and we need to be all in. It needs to come from the private sector, the government, citizens, civil society, all collectively together.
Mm-hmm. You've talked about the bill, the ban on the single-use plastics, that most people are doing it. There has been some reports that there are underground markets for these. How can the law deal with it, the law enforcers deal with this?
For the single-use plastics, we have to be very clear. The single-use plastic ban that's coming up on the 5th of June is covering only 10 items that are being found in the environment most, and therefore being labeled as very difficult to manage litter and pollution. So it's not all, because if you walk into a supermarket, almost everything is packed in plastic. There's hardly anything, and that's all single use because you throw it in the bin straight away. So we, for the single-use plastic ban, that's only in restricted areas and tourist areas, and it's not in general. And so you will still be able to buy, for instance, cotton buds probably in the supermarket, but hopefully, because you cannot, it's banned on other areas, you probably will find alternatives. So slowly, with those kind of bans, we will find alternatives for single-use plastic we really don't need. And at the same time, we also need to look at other items that are still not on a list of ban and that are used because it's you want hygienic packaging, you want to have lightweight packaging, etc. And we really need to rethink: do we need those materials for that specific purpose? And what do I do at home? Because to be honest, I mean, I also end up with a tremendous amount of single-use packaging just because you cook for your family, and you wonder whether it's all necessary to have it packed like that.
Mm-hmm. So where do you get the balance between phasing out the use of plastic and ensuring that we don't expose the forest cover to just more paper being made so that we can get the biodegradable material? Where is the balance?
Sorry, I didn't get the last bit of your question.
Yeah, I'm asking, where do you find a balance between ensuring that you're phasing out the plastic, but at the same time you are not exposing the forest cover that there already is to making more paper to ensure that we have biodegradable packaging?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's correct. You don't want to now sacrifice your forest, because that's another issue we can talk about another day, in terms of climate change and loss of forest and biodiversity mainly. So I agree. So what we need to do is look critical at the alternatives you need to use, if at all you need alternatives, or the quality of the plastics and the materials we're currently using. So we can also look at, can we not reuse it again? Can we remanufacture with it again? And can we maybe recycle it? So those are already alternatives for not paper as such. And then we have a lot of innovations going on where we use different materials from paper that can replace plastics. So for instance, there are trying to figure out whether with starch products we can also create alternatives to plastics for some of the purposes we're using it for. Other plastics, which are not single use, will require also a much higher quality, like for instance a printer. And a printer should have such high quality plastic that the owner, the producer of the printer, the HP for instance, printers, are responsible to actually take back the printer, refurnish it to update the product. And then you don't have to use new plastics for that, but just a few new components that will boost the machine itself. So it's really about rethinking and redesigning materials, and not just by replacing anything and everything with either glass or paper.
Right. Thank you very much, Karin. And what are your closing remarks as we come to the end of this interview?
I would like to express there's really much, it's a big crisis, and we're really aware on how it's impacting each and every one of us, while there is not so much cohesion between everyone. So this is a worldwide crisis, and we suddenly realize how interdependent we are. And I think it's a good wake-up call to look at what actually has it taught us. Like, we can work more from home. We can do transport and road use in a different way. We have clear skies. We have a lot of solidarity. We restore actually local communities and businesses. So I think it's a very good word Bill Gates is using by saying, I really hope it's a great corrector, and it will speed us, every one of us, not only businesses, to create a new economy where everyone is thriving, and where we let go of eternal growth.
Thank you very much, Karin Boomsma, the Director, Sustainable Inclusive Businesses Kenya, just giving us an overview of how we can make these work better for us, have better management of waste, upcycling, recycling. Thank you very much, Karin.